What's up, y'all? I hope y'all have been having a good day so far. My day has been pretty productive, so I can't complain. I I wanted to include you guys on my Bible study that I did last night because it really put things in perspective for me, and I just wanted to share my perspective that I got from it. So I went back to Genesis. I read chapter 40 last night. And basically, it just, some points that hit home for me is how Joseph relied on God's power in his time of affliction. And there was a point in time where, in my time of affliction, I wasn't relying on God. I wasn't relying on his power and his strength. He remained faithful. He remained a servant. He remained humble. And it really is just a true testament on how it's important to really wholeheartedly understand that in afflicting times, whether we're in our waiting season, whether we are in a season where it feels like everything is going wrong or things aren't going the way that you feel like they should be going, or you're feeling like you're in a position where there is no end to it, there is no out to it. Because I've been there. And what really helped me and what aided me into knowing that God guides us and puts us in situations to build our character. At the end of the day, it's all about growth and evolving and becoming totally dependent on Him. And so I wanted to point out in Genesis 40 verses 8, where the baker and the butler came to Joseph asking for interpretations of their dreams. And Joseph was like, first of all, it's God that gives me this willpower to be able to interpret these dreams. The interpretation comes from prayer and the wisdom and knowledge that God instills into him. And so he was just giving God his credit, like, listen, I'm a servant to God, you know what I mean? And I really want to pinpoint that even in Joseph's time of affliction or being held captive for so long, being forgotten about, being overlooked or being overshadowed, he remained a servant to God. You know what I mean? Even when he was a servant to other people. And I feel like we get it mixed up between serving the world and serving God. It's not the same. When we serve the world, there is no peace that comes from it. When we serve the world, it's always a point where we're not feeling fulfilled. We're not feeling like we're capable of getting through an obstacle. When we're doing things for the world, there is no real joy and peace that comes from doing that. As soon as Phora, the butler, and the baker came to him for this interpretation, he went straight to God. And I feel like that is something that I would love to work on. Like, my first response should be going to God first. It shouldn't be going to the highest paid mental health coach or the best therapist. It should be going to God, seeking his face, and running to his secret place, running to his secret place and fleeing from the world. It shouldn't be vice versa. And so Joseph continued to give God his glory. He continued to seek him even when he was doing things for other people. His character remained the same throughout the whole process up until he became a ruler in Egypt. His character, he didn't become boastful. He didn't become prideful. He didn't let his ego take over and be like, nah, y'all forgot about me. For 2 years, 2 years after the butler got his interpretation from Joseph, he left Joseph in captivity. He was supposed to put in a word for him to Pharaoh, the king, and he forgot. So he was in captivity for a whole nother 2 years before he became a ruler, before he was able to interpret the king's dream. I believe in times of affliction, in times where we are in a conflicting situation, where we are forced to sit down and sit in the obstacle, sit in the storm. Those are the times where our character is built, where our character is formed, and we are gradually becoming the person that God wants us to be. Because we're forced to be looking at that mirror, looking at who we are, looking at that trauma you might be holding on to, or looking at the past that you still have yet let go, or whatever it may be. In those times of affliction, it's where God can do his best work. And I feel like sometimes the first response is to run away from that. Is to run away from the uncomfortable growth, the uncomfortable solitude. God was able to use Joseph in unconventional circumstances, and Joseph remained obedient. He remained steadfast in his prayer. And wow, and I feel like also in a times where we feel like everything is going wrong for us, oddly, and ironically, we can be that encourager. We can be that we could be an example of how strong and how powerful God is in times of affliction. And it's a perfect time for other people to see God's glory and how he works and how faithful he is. God remained faithful the whole time while Joseph was going through his struggles. God was right there by him that whole time. And sometimes I feel like God leaves us in those times where we are facing obstacles, but it's really the opposite. As long as you seek him, he will make himself apparent. He will become more apparent. so that it becomes more of a partnership rather than you steering the wheel. When we look for answers in the world, or when we look for answers, or when we put God's responsibility onto others, there will never be a clear answer, or there will never be peace from that. We don't get peace from the world, we get peace from God. We get peace from being fervent in our prayers. We get peace when we give God His glory and God His credit and lean onto God and ask Him what He thinks, ask Him what His perspective is. And the outcome always ends up tenfold or 10 times better than what you could fathom. When we look for answers in the world, the answer most likely will not align with God's will. If Joseph didn't go to God, he would have never known the famine that was ahead. He would have never known that Egypt was going to be able to experience plenty. He would have never known how to prepare for what was to come. And so I feel like it's important for us to not lean on our own understanding or on the world's answers or on the world's point of view, but go to God and ask Him, what does He think? Or pray for His perspective. Pray for the knowledge and wisdom to see things from His point of view. Because He is the only one who can see the future. He's the only one who has the answers to things that we can't see, that we don't know that's coming. He never became worrisome. He was a prayer warrior. While he was in the ward, while he was in captivity, while he was a servant to the king, sometimes we have to know what it's like to be a servant of God to become a leader. In times of affliction, sometimes we have to know what it is to be a servant to become a leader. In times of affliction is when God can do His best work, is when God gets His glory. He gets the credit that He deserves, because the wisdom and the knowledge are all gifts from Him. We have to know whose we are, just as Joseph did. So whether you are going through a time of affliction, or you feel like you're mentally captive, or you feel like there is no end to your obstacle or your storm, the answer is to remain steadfast in your prayer, to remain faithful, and know that God is holy. Know that He will never put you in a situation where you're tempted to do something that is not like Him. In this time of affliction, remember that it's for our growth, it's for our character development, and it's not forever, it's temporary. And there's something out there better for you. There is a breakthrough. But before the breakthrough, you have to break and you have to get through what it is that God wants to prune, that God wants to shed away, or what God wants you to learn, what mistakes that you have to see as a lesson. what past trauma that is weighing you down, or whatever current situation that you are in. God has the power to be able to strengthen you when you are weary, strengthen you when you are weak, give you that power. Sometimes it's needed every day. Sometimes I got to be like, I don't have the strength today. Like, I need your power. I need your strength to carry me throughout this day, because I know I can't do it alone. I know I don't have that type of capacity. I don't have that type of willingness to be able to carry myself throughout each and every day, because this world is full of obstacles. It's full of things coming at us. It's full of just a lot of wrongdoings. It's full of a lot of pain. But in the time where we remain faithful, and we know that at the end of the day, He is guiding us on the best path of our lives, and we stay on that course, we're going to get through it. And thank you for just listening to that. I hope it stood out to you, some point stood out to you, just as it did for me. I know that God will continue to remain faithful, and He's never changing, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to know and to witness, and encouraging, even when I know that life will continue to bring affliction. I know that I can count on my God. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.